Okay, so today we are on chapter 3, day 3. We're on the final 2 lessons of this chapter. We're first going to start off with a method called fraction busting. So basically what we're doing is when we see fractions in an equation when we're solving for x, we want to get rid of the fractions, and we do so by using this method. So in order to get rid of fractions, you have to look at your equation and look at your denominator. Denominator being the number on the bottom. Okay, so if I look at my first problem, so like letter A, my number on the bottom is a 7. So in order to get rid of that 7, I have to multiply every single thing in my equation by 7. So it looks like this. So I'm multiplying by 7, by 7, by 7. By doing so, if the number that I'm multiplying by matches the denominator, those two cancel each other out. So here, I'm left with this 2x. Okay, my plus sign. If the number I'm multiplying by matches the denominator, they cancel each other out. Here I'm left with the 5. Okay, I bring down my equal sign. And then for the 7 and the negative 3, I just multiply those straight up. So 7 times negative 3, I get negative 21. Now this is the same problem, I just don't have fractions anymore, which makes it a little bit easier to solve. So then from here, I just solve like normal. The opposite of a positive is a negative. Okay, and I do that on both sides. These cancel. I bring down my 2x, and negative 21 minus 5 is negative 26. I can then divide by 2. So then x equals negative 13. So essentially, I manipulate the problem, I change it just so that it's capable of solving, and then I do the steps that I'm familiar with. Okay, so I'm going to try letter B now. Okay, letter B is a special type of problem. Here's why. I have one denominator here. So over here I had 2, and then here I technically only have the 1 on the left side. So when I'm multiplying by my denominator to get rid of the fraction, when I multiply by 3, this is one fraction. It's not two fractions, like this is one fraction. So when I multiply by 3, I multiply it once on the left and once on the right. So these problems can be really tricky, just be careful. If the number I'm multiplying by matches the denominator, they cancel each other out. So I'm left with this 2 plus w, and I multiply these straight up, so 3 times 10, which gives me 30. From here, then I just solve like normal. Since I want the w by itself, this 2 is a positive, the opposite of that is a negative. These cancel, so w equals 28. Okay, we'll try 2 more, and then I'll have you try some on the back by yourself. All right, letter C. So for letter C, you'll notice that you have 2 different denominators. So you have a 3 and you have a 7. So it doesn't matter how many different numbers you have on the bottom, it will just tell you how many times we have to repeat the process. So essentially, whichever number comes first is the one that I multiply by first. So the 3 comes first, so I multiply everything by 3. If what I'm multiplying by matches the denominator, they cancel each other out. So I'm left with this negative 2x. If the number I'm multiplying by does not match the denominator, I multiply what I have. So you see how I still have the minus? I'm going to include the minus. And I have 3 times x, which is 3x. But I still have the 7. Okay? And I'm going to do 3 times 17. That gives me 51. So because I didn't get rid of all my fractions when I multiplied by 3, I'm going to repeat this process again, but this time with the number 7. So I'm going to multiply everything now by 7. And you can repeat this process as many times as needed. There's like no limit. So here I'm going to multiply 7 times negative 2. That gives me negative 14x. If the number I'm multiplying by matches the denominator, they cancel each other out. So I'm left with minus 3x. And then here I just multiply these straight up. So 7 times 51. That's going to give me 357. Now that I've gotten rid of all my fractions, I can proceed and solve my equation like normal. So I'm going to combine these because they're like terms. When I combine them, I get negative 17x. Then to get the x by itself, I'm going to divide by negative 17. When I divide those, I get negative 21. Okay, let's try letter D. All right, you'll notice for letter D is that there are 3 different denominators. So the fraction busting method, we will have to do 3 times, which is okay. You can do it as many times as needed. All right, so the denominator that comes first is the 10. So I'm going to multiply everything by 10 first. If the number I'm multiplying by matches the denominator, they cancel each other out. I'm left with 3. Okay, my plus sign. If the number I'm multiplying by does not match the denominator, I multiply the top straight up. So 10 times 2x, which is 20x. And then bring your 5 with you. Equal sign. If the number I'm multiplying by does not match the denominator, I multiply those straight up. 10 times 1 is 10 over 2. Because I did not get rid of all my fractions, I'm going to repeat this process again, this time with the number 5. Everything gets multiplied by 5. So these two I multiply, I get 15. The 5s match, so I bring down my plus sign and I bring down the 20x. The 5 and the 2 do not match, so I multiply these. That gives me 50. Okay, because I still have one fraction, I'm going to do this process one last time, but I'm going to multiply everything by 2. Okay, so I'm going to multiply these. I get 30. I'm going to multiply these. I get 40x. The 2's match, so those cancel each other out. I'm left with the 50. Okay, now I have no more fractions, and now I can solve like normal. So that positive 30, I'm going to move it to the other side by having negative 30. I get 40x equals 20. Divide by 40. And then when I simplify this and reduce it, I get x equals 1/2. Remember, fractions are okay. It doesn't necessarily mean we did anything wrong. All right, let's turn to the next page. All right, so for these 2 triads, I would like you to pause the video and try them by yourselves. Once you feel like you got it, go ahead and unpause the video because I'm going to show you the correct answer with all of the correct work. All right, so hopefully you tried them by yourself, and if you did, you should have gotten this as your answer for A and for B. So for the first one, you multiply everything by 2. You'll notice that it doesn't get rid of this fraction in the middle, so you do the process again with 3. And in the end, you do get a fraction as your final answer, which is okay. B is a little bit trickier. You got to multiply everything by 3 first, and then you'll notice not all the fractions go away. You do the same process with the number 2, and then you solve for y. You get 30. So again, just be patient when you're doing these problems because there's a lot of little things to remember, and it's just easy to forget maybe a denominator or a plus sign or a negative. All right. The last section or the last types of problems that we're going to talk about is exponential equations. And so when solving an exponential equation, you want your base. Your base is your big number. So if I have something like this, the b is called your base, and the a is called your exponent. You could also call it a power. So when we're referring to our base, we're talking about the big number or the number on the bottom. And we want the big numbers or the bottom numbers to be the same. If they're the same, it makes the problem easier. If they're not the same, we have to change them so that they are. Okay, so let's try letter A. Your base is the big number, meaning the 2. So like this 2 and this 2. If those base numbers match and they're the same, you can cross them out. Your exponent stuff, or what you have in the air, you will bring down. So like I have this x plus 3, and I have this 2x. And then from here, I just solve for x. So I'm going to subtract the x from both sides. I get 3 equals x. So if your bases match, it actually makes the problem a little bit nicer. However, you will run into situations where the bases don't match. So for letter B. Okay, when your bases don't match, I recommend changing the bigger numbers so that it looks like the smaller one. So when I'm looking at my bases, I have 3 and I have 9. 3 is smaller, so I'm going to keep the side with the 3 the same. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that 9 and I want to change it so that it looks like 3. So essentially, I'm doing 3 to what power will give me 9. And then here's where you try different numbers in your calculator. So like I would try the number 1 first. So like 3 to the 1. 3 to the 1 is 3, okay? So it's not 1. Then I would try 3 to the 2. 3 to the 2, if I plug that into my calculator, that's 9. That works. So essentially, you're trying different numbers to see which one will work. Okay, now that I changed my 9 to a 3, I'm going to put that back over here. So this becomes 3 to the second power. This is the same as the 9, right? Because 3 to the second power is 9. However, the other thing that you have to include is this 2x. So I'm going to include it right next to the 2, but I'm going to keep it in parentheses. So you have to change the way the 9 looks, but you also have to include the exponents that are already there. Now you'll notice that my bases match, which is perfect. They cross each other out. So I'm left with 5 equals, and then 2 times 2x. I have 5 equals. When I multiply those, I get 4x. Then I'll divide by 4. So I get 5 over 4 equals x. You can change that to a decimal as well. I think it's 1.25. Either or is acceptable, but we do get a decimal or fraction for this one. Okay, let's try the bottom 4. So if your bases match, so you see how the 3 matches the 3, that's good. Those cancel each other out. Whatever I have left over in the air is my exponents, I bring back down. So I have the 2x plus 1, and I have the 3. And then from there, I just solve for x. So I'll subtract the 1. 2x equals 2. Divide by 2. X is 1. It's just the situations where the bases don't match where it gets a little bit trickier. All right, so I'm looking at my bases. I have 2 and I have 8. Keep the smaller one the same. So the 2 is smaller, so I'm going to keep that side the same. I have to change the 8. Okay, so let me do my work on this side. I don't want to write 8 though, so I want to change 8 so that it looks like 2. So I'm trying to figure out what number goes in the air so that it looks like 8. Okay, so I'll try different numbers. I'll try 1. Okay, if I put 2 to the 1 in my calculator, it doesn't give me 8. Okay, so it's probably not 1. Let me try 2. 2 to the 2 in my calculator does not give me 8. Okay, perfect. It's probably not 2. And you can do this process as many times as needed. Okay, let me try 2 to the 3. If I put 2 to the 3 in my calculator, I do get 8. That works. That means I now have to put this here. So I'm going to put 2 to the third power. Because 2 to the third power is the same as 8, I'm just rewriting it, okay? And the other thing you have to include is the 70, and I'm going to keep that in parentheses. Okay, you see how my bases match now? Like they're both 2's? I can cross them out. Whatever I have in the air, I'm going to bring down. And then I'm going to multiply 3 times 70. I get 210. So just play with different numbers in your calculator. That's the best advice I could give you in order to figure out what you need to change your number to. Okay, let's try the 2 at the bottom. So I will do letter C, and then I'll have you try letter D. Okay, so look at your bases. I have 16 and I have 4. The smaller one, which is the 4, I'm going to keep the same. The bigger one, I will change. Okay, so I'm going to do my work on the side. I'll do it over here. So I have 16, and I want it to look like 4. So I'm asking myself, 4 to what power gives me 16? Okay, here's where I try different numbers. I'll try 4 to the 1. 4 to the 1 does not give me 16. That is okay. Then I'll try 4 to the 2. 4 to the 2 does give me 16, so that's perfect. Then I'll write this here. So this is 4 to the 2. But then you see how I have that x in the air? You can't forget the x. So always go back and just double check to make sure that you have, and if you have anything in the air, right, any exponents. Now my bases match. You see how they're both 4? I'm going to cross them out. So I have 2 times x equals x minus 3. When I multiply those, I get 2x equals x minus 3. In order to get the x by itself, I can subtract the x from both sides. And in the end, I'll write my answer over here. I'm left with x equals negative 3. Okay, so what I would like you to do is I would like you to try letter D by yourself. So you could pause the video right here so that you could try it. And then once you feel like you have it, you can unpause so I can show you the work and the correct answer. Okay, so here is the work for letter D. Okay, so you have to change the 36 because it's bigger. It becomes 6 to the second power, plus I have to multiply that x, right? Because that x is already in the air. Then, since my 6's match, I can cross them out, bring down my exponents, and in the end, I get x equals 5. All right, so that'll conclude chapter 3. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask your teacher, or you could go to tutoring, or you could go to any other support so that you're better prepared for your test.